I'm sure you've seen these cheap little survival kits on Amazon, anywhere between $15 and $80. Some of them, depending on what they include and how much you're spending, are more worth it than others. If you bought one kind of going off the reviews expecting more than what you ended up getting and being less than impressed, or maybe if you got one for Christmas or something as a stocking stuffer and you're not impressed, it's not automatically trash. I can show you how you can turn it into a survival kit that's at least useful enough to keep. A lot of them come in the same little plastic storage container. One of the issues I have with it, besides the fact that it's meant to look as though it's waterproof and almost definitely not waterproof. You could say it's water resistant, but submerging this underwater definitely leaks water. My main issue is that these little buckles are not only hard to open, but not the most durable. Typically, instead of like hurting myself opening it, I'll typically pry it open with a knife or something like that. Everything's been taken out of the protective plastic that it comes in, but you can see that it's not really possible to organize it any better than this. Everything's pretty crammed in here. I'll quickly go over everything that's included in the kit, and then I'll transition over to how you can modify the kit, what you should maybe take out, what you can leave. Well, I guess finishing up the actual container that it comes in, it does have a little rubber gasket down in there, so like I said, meant to look as though it's waterproof, but it's not high enough quality and it's way too flimsy. And when you're stuffing this compartment this full and it's distorting the shape, then it's just even less likely to be able to be airtight. This little flashlight though, for the first item in the kit, it's just one of the standard adjustable beam flashlights. So you can adjust the beam. There are different settings. There's bright, dim, and then the strobe feature. It's better than nothing. It's a little single AA battery. It is not waterproof. You can tell from the gasket on there. It's not even fully seated around the bottom of the threads, so it's not going to be waterproof. And then even if this end was waterproof, I guarantee you the other end is not, especially if it's on that little slide. But for the price, you can maybe keep it in the kit. This little compass is pretty unreliable, little lensatic compass. You could definitely replace this with a better version, especially for the amount of space that it takes up. If you're not planning on actually going anywhere or needing to navigate, then you might not actually need to include a compass in the first place. It takes up a lot of space in here. The knife is better than nothing. You could maybe include this in the kit. A little folding knife does not take up very much space, and it does have the little seat belt cutter and then a pocket clip on the other end. For your seam rod and striker with a little ruler and then a hex bit on the end. Tactical pen. This one does not have the handcuff key in the end, but it's fairly lightweight. These wire saws are pretty worthless. I would not keep that in the kit. Little emergency whistle, signal mirror. And the last thing in here is one of those little business card wallet pocket tools. It's got a letter opener, a little ruler, a flat blade screwdriver. This apparently is a cell phone stand if you put a business card in there. A couple different sizes of standard hex bits, headphone wrap, can opener, a peeler, and then you can see on here they didn't even actually punch out the #1 standard hex bit on this one, so not worth the amount of weight that it takes. It doesn't take very much space, but I think it's pretty worthless. These foam pads help keep the kit quiet, but they also take up space. So just quickly sorting out between the items that I would keep and wouldn't. I would keep, if I was going to keep this lensatic compass that doesn't have a mirror on it, then I would include the signal mirror for sure. I'd maybe keep the knife, probably keep the flashlight, probably keep the emergency whistle, the ferrocene rod and striker. So you can see that I'm keeping a decent amount of the kit. You can do better. If your goal was to do a high quality kit, then would not start with any of these components or keep any of the components, not even use the storage compartment. But if the goal of the video is to show you how you could use this stuff and not completely just throw it away. Going off of Dave Canterbury's 10 C's of Survival, this kit, you could say maybe was aimed at trying to meet some of those requirements. So cutting tool, not only the knife, but technically the wire saw is also a cutting tool, just it doesn't work very well. After that is combustion device. So the ferrocene rod is just no backup to the ferrocene rod. If you either can't figure out how to use it or you've worn through all of the magnesium. There is no cover, so whether that's an emergency blanket or a tarp, that's completely missing from this kit. Container, this is a container, but it's not the container that it's hinting at when Dave Canterbury talks through the 10 C's of Survival. He's talking more of like a stainless steel water storage container, something like this. Cordage is also missing, so typically would want maybe 100 feet of 50-50 cord. There's no way this is going to fit in the kit, so that's just something you have to carry separately. Sometimes these kits include a paracord bracelet, but a lot of times this isn't an actual paracord. It's just something that's meant to look like paracord, and it's usually somewhere between 10 and 12 feet of paracord all twisted up in here in the bracelet. You can have lanyards made for like a water bottle holder. You can have braided out of actual paracord, and then you have say over how much cord is actually in that lanyard. But there's almost no way that you're going to get any useful amount of paracord inside of this small of a storage compartment. The next C is a cotton bandana, obviously missing from this kit. Cargo tape is also missing. Compass, though, is included. Cloth sail needle is missing. And a candling device is included in the flashlight. Also, if the sun's out and you're talking candling device in terms of like signal mirror, in order to get someone's attention off of reflecting the sun, then this could also kind of count as a candling device. So with all of this all laid out, I'll kind of set it to the side and show you how you can modify this kit to something a little more useful. See, from this kit, it's the exact same storage compartment. This is just a little elastic headlamp. It's possible to shove it in the compartment, but if you're likely going to need access to it in order to open the kit and not be losing things as they fall out, as you're shoving to get to the flashlight, it doesn't take up that much extra space to just have the flashlight tied up on the outside. Also helps keep the lid closed if you're not going to use all of the buckles, or if the buckles start breaking off. This elastic on the headlamp will help keep it closed. Also, if your goal is to include an entire roll of cargo tape, that's not going to fit in here. Even if it did, it would take up so much space you'd have no room for anything else. So you could like paracord with a little bit of extra paracord it to the little loops at the end of the kit, or you could, if you're going to include a water bottle, you could wrap some Gorilla tape like this around the edge. If you don't care about the label, it'd probably make more sense to set the tape down closer to this rim, because it also help keep the stainless steel nesting cup a little bit more clean, because then nothing could fall down between the Nalgene bottle and the stainless steel cup. It also might make it a little bit quieter instead of it being a little bit loose. You can hear it maybe rattling. But I was just trying to save the label on the water bottle. So now that we've talked through the goofy components of the basic kit, talk about how you can modify it to be a little bit more useful of a survival kit. If this is not going to be waterproof no matter what you do to it, then you might as well maybe modify the outside, whether that's like gluing a little button compass to the outside, or you can screw in or glue little MOLLE attachments so that you have a way of attaching other components, whether that's headlamp, if you don't have to strap it around the container, or if you don't want to use these loopholes, to use a paracord little loop to attach your cargo tape. You can make little modifications like that. You could also even, at risk of scratching the signal mirror if you do it, but you can glue the signal mirror to the outside of the kit with that. We'll go on to the inside. So obviously I have a headlamp here. Not included in that kit. It doesn't take up that much extra space. This is a very low profile version of a headlamp. It's also, if you don't feel like latching all of these buckles, or if these buckles do eventually break, then this is at least kind of holding the clamshell ends together. Doesn't take up that much extra space, and it being outside of the kit gives you a little bit more space for other things inside the kit. Also, complete roll of cargo tape is going to take up a lot of space inside the kit if you have it in there, so you can do things like paracord, attach the little loops on there. It's still kind of the same form factor. You get a little bit of flexibility if you have a little bit more slack. You can either put it on top or underneath as opposed to in line with the rest of the kit. I think that's pretty much all to talk about. With the outside, it's the same exact kit, just as non-waterproof as that one. But as you open, you can see that I have removed the foam little insulation because it's kind of worthless unless you, for whatever reason, need this kit to be quiet and with things not to rattle. But if you have bandana on one end and then that emergency blanket on the other, then it keeps everything from rattling. So you're actually getting use out of the cushion that you have built into your components. So now that we have it open, we'll start going through the 10Cs. This is not one of the 10Cs, it's just had a little bit of extra space for some earplugs, hearing protection. This is wet fire starting tinder, so the Combustion C. That's like kind of the second half of a fire steel. Still have a fire steel in this kit, the same exact one, with the ferrocene rod and the striker, but also have a BIC Lighter. So if this either doesn't work, you can't figure out how to use it, or you run out, then the BIC Lighter is good. You could use waterproof matches, but they take up just as much, if not more space, and you either have like 15 waterproof matches in this storage container or 25 waterproof matches in there. You can't reuse them. Once you've run through all of your matches, you're out of luck, so this will last a little longer. Also, because of where it's stowed, it's not at risk of getting a valve pushed, you're not at less risk of this leaking. So that's primary, backup, and then the actual tinder. With this kit, you're going to have to actually find tinder and kindling in order to start a fire. So that's your combustion device. Between these three items, after the combustion device is cover. That's the emergency blanket down there at the bottom. We'll get to that in a second. After that is container. So neither of these kits technically count as the container. Yes, the container, this itself is a container, but that's not what it's hinting at. It's hinting at a way of storing water. So either an Nalgene like this, it's nested with a stainless steel cup, or a stainless steel water bottle. So there's pros and cons to each. Talk a little bit about each of them. You need a stainless steel vessel of some sort in order to, after creating fire, to boil water if you have water of questionable quality, in order to not get sick. So this gives you the opportunity of just boiling the water in this container with little fold-out handles, and then collecting water or storing water in a separate container. You can see that I've also gone ahead and added a couple feet of that Gorilla tape to the outside end of the water bottle. But just this 1-inch Gorilla tape, it's supposedly weather resistant, but I think continually getting water onto the tape is probably not going to do very well. So if you're collecting water from this and then carefully pouring it into the open mouth, maybe you're more likely for the tape to last a little longer. You don't have the option of putting tape on the stainless steel, so you'll have to find somewhere else to store the stainless steel if you get the stainless steel water bottle like that. So obviously it's just going to melt off if you were to apply heat or put these containers, the container, into a fire in order to boil the water. After the container, then you got cordage. You need 100 feet, or at least close to 100 feet. You can get a little bit of that capacity in things like the braided Paracord bracelets. These are usually between 10 and 12 feet. The only problem is a lot of times they're not actually paracord, they just look like it. You could have a lanyard made for something like this water bottle. You could have as many feet as you want braided into a lanyard. That's one option, as opposed to just carrying an entire spool of 100 feet of paracord. But paracord's important because, like it says on the package, it's a outer sleeve around 7 removable cores. You can use that for emergency fishing line, thread, snares, or any other survival situation. There's no way this much going to fit in this kit, so you'll have to find somewhere else to store that. After cordage is cotton bandana. It's 100% cotton. If it is 100% cotton, then not only can you use it for protecting yourself from the elements or preventing sunburn on your head and neck, but also it will burn if you needed to use it for building a fire. Also, you could use it for medical purposes, whether you cut it into strips and use it as like a bandage, or you can shape it into a sling. You could also dunk it into a river or creek, or pour water on it and use it to cool yourself off. And you can see that I'm just using it in place of the foam padding on the inside of the top half of the clamshell. Cargo tape we talked about, entire roll. You could also store cargo tape on things like the survival whistle, the emergency whistle, which maybe you could use as more of a keychain as opposed to taking up space in the kit. So you can get a little bit of cargo tape capacity there. You can either buy or roll your own rolls, smaller rolls of duct tape. You can, like I showed you on the container, you can put it around outside of your Nalgene. Different methods as opposed to taking up an entire half of this container with your huge roll of Gorilla Tape. After cargo tape is compass. You could use this compass, but it seems like it's worth getting a slightly more reliable compass. If your compass does not have a mirror on it like this does, then you probably would want to supplement with the signal mirror that came in the kit. So like this lens at a compass is a little smaller. So if I were to use this instead of that, then I would include the compass, or the signal mirror. Signal mirror, not only for its intended use, but also you can use it to look for fleas, ticks, injuries, cuts, places that you can't see without the help of a mirror like this. I'd be careful about skipping the compass entirely if you do, because you're going to try to make the argument that you have a compass on your phone. And then you better have a way of recharging it to ensure that you have that access to a compass once the battery dies. So something like this, battery recharger, this gives you a little bit more flexibility because in addition to having a light, it also can charge your phone as long as you remember to actually bring the power cable. But you can also open this and then you can potentially use any of those batteries for your flashlight or any other purpose. You just won't be able to use it to charge once you have taken the batteries out or killed the batteries. But this takes up as much space, or if not more, than the compass in the first place. So that's a trade-off. After the compass is the cloth sail needle. It's down here. It's going to take me a second to find it, so I'll save that for a little bit later in the video. After that is the candling device. So the first half of the candling device was the headlamp, pretty high quality headlamp. It's bright. Unfortunately, it's one of that button style batteries, so you might want to carry a spare one of those. And then the other half of the candling device is the previously included flashlight with the same exact features as the other one we just talked about. So 2 separate lights, headlamp and a normal flashlight for your candling devices. The cutting tool, yes, this is a cutting tool. In addition to having the fold-out blade, it has the belt cutter, where you can use it to cut paracord. Also has a glass breaker, a pocket clip that may or may not be useful, but this is not enough to count as a cutting tool for an entire first aid or survival kit. So it's better than nothing, but I'd say even like a Mora knife like this is still not good enough because it doesn't have a full tang blade. It doesn't have steel that goes all the way through the blade handle. Even this slightly nicer Mora knife still would not recommend it necessarily. I think you need to add a full-size survival knife like this. A little bit thicker blade, a little more durable, easier to sharpen, straight blade as opposed to serrated. You can tell that the steel goes all the way through the handle, so it's durable. You can use it to baton and process wood. The back end has an exposed steel surface, so you could use that for hammering. And then down here in the sheath is more ferrocerium rod. This is not enough to count as your combustion device, but it's a decent backup. There's no way this is going to fit in this kit, so it's just something you have to actually add extra and carry along with this kit in order to make it a full survival kit that includes everything that you need for the 10 Cs. Now that we're to the bottom, talk over the cover. So this is just a small, simple Mylar boil rescue blanket. It's small, it's not very easily reused. These really cheap quality ones kind of just like use it once and then don't expect to ever be able to fold it back down this thin again. But because it's a little bit softer than everything else, it works kind of like the foam does in this one to keep everything quiet. Down here, zip ties, a couple zip ties for random uses, and then finally that cloth sail needle. So this is used for repairing tents or canvas tarp or clothes. You could use it to pick at splinters, or like an absolute last ditch effort emergency situation, you could use it to apply sutures if you had to. So that's how you can make this off the shelf crappy Amazon survival kit into something a little bit more useful. And then we'll talk over like more premium options and how you can make it even nicer. It's just going to cost a little bit more. So working backwards from the handling device, this flashlight takes up a decent amount of space because we know for sure that this compartment is not waterproof, and the light definitely isn't. Water mixing with this is not going to go very well, and then you just have the one headlamp flashlight to use as a backup. A small light like this, Olight, it's pretty high quality. It's got 2 different modes, dim and bright. Much brighter than the output on this one would ever be. You can tell it's smaller. The little pocket clip is a lot better, better quality. You can use it from both directions. It's not an adjustable beam, but you can tell from opening the cap that much better quality threads, and that O-ring is actually going to keep water out. So much more likely this is actually going to keep water out of the light if this starts leaking, and that this will continue to work. It's also smaller, like I said, so it'll take up less space and you have more space for other things. For the cover, it'll probably be worth taking up a little bit of extra space with a Survive Outdoors Longer, better quality emergency blanket like this. You can tell that not only is it a little bit longer than this foil Mylar one, but it's also a little bit thicker. You can push it down, but it's still going to take up more space than this one would. Technically, it would probably be better to have some sort of bivy, whether that's this brand or the Survive Outdoors Longer Escape bivy. You can also get their version of the emergency shelter kit. This does not take up very much space just in your glove box or center console or even like in your door pocket. It's not going to fit in the kit, but it's probably smart to bring one of these in your car with you and just grab that in addition to this survival kit. The next step up from the cheap little shelter kits is this Vive Outdoors Longer emergency shelter kit. It's got better quality tarp material. It's got some tent stakes, some high visibility reflective cordage for building the different types of shelters, and then even the tensioner, the elastic tensioner inside of the cordage is glow in the dark. So it cuts down on your requirement for needing to bring as much paracord. We talked about the higher quality compass. If you were going to use a normal lens added compass without the signal mirror, then bring a separate signal mirror. Cargo tape, because we've already included entire roll, I don't see any reason to bring any more than that. Cotton bandana, if you wanted to bring more than one, obviously you'd have more flexibility for all the uses. For your one cotton bandana, the more you have, the more that you can use it. Cordage, important to bring that full 100 feet. So find a way to store that with your gear. The container we've talked about, you need one of these two versions. I'd also recommend keeping it full of water so that as soon as you start on this survival situation, you're not immediately having to go search for water and purify it. The cover we've talked about, higher quality emergency blanket, but ideally also a bivy and a shelter kit. Combustion device, if you don't want to bring a BIC lighter, you don't want to use a ferrocerium rod, then you can use things like the Survival Outdoors Longer Tinder Quick. These are really easy to use. Oh, it's not Tinder Quick, sorry, this is the Tinder Quick. This is the Flint Striker. Really easy to use, takes up a little less space than the BIC lighter does. So you can include that instead of or in addition to a BIC lighter. You can use the wet fire starting tinder or the Tinder Quick little fabric. This one you can use the entire tab that's in here, but recommended that you shave off portions of it, just like with this. Instead of using an entire little set of the thread, the 4 threads, you can peel it apart, cut it apart, and use smaller portions of it. You can maybe include both if you have space for both. And then after combustion device, going on to the cutting device. So if you're replacing everything in this kit, you might as well replace the knife with a higher quality flip out butterfly knife. Some are a little bit lower profile than others. Maybe you could take the pocket clip off if you don't want it to be taking up extra space inside the kit. And then the last thing to potentially replace is the storage compartment itself. If you need it to be waterproof, like these other survival kits that we've talked through, using like food safe, airtight containers, you'll have to actually replace that as well. And at that point, there's just nothing left from the original survival kit. So if you don't already own one, I don't recommend going to just buy this to then have to go straight into modifying it. It'd probably be smarter to get to the storage container you want from the beginning and the tools that you want from the beginning, so you're not paying for stuff you're not actually going to use. The last piece of advice is if you are sure that your survival situation is not going to require any sort of navigation, then saving all the extra space by not including a compass. You can maybe apply some of that space towards like food items, give you a little bit more energy, whether that's like MRE style, peanut butter, Gatorade powder packets, peanut butter packets, protein powder. Protein powder is probably going to be hard to fit in there. You're at risk of breaking the container trying to fold it, just squeeze down in there. But any of the rest of these things are fairly small, low profile. You could figure out a way to make certain combinations of these fit.